Good day, everybody. This is Carpo, coming at you from the backyard domain, otherwise known as my backyard. I thought I'd just step outside for a minute, make a quick video while I have a moment, and there are quite a few things I like to talk about in videos. I make these because it's like a journal of my existence, I guess. And I can look back and think, wow, this is what I was thinking at this state or that state. But more than that, it's the little bits and pieces, the little messages that I'm able to receive from people and share with people. Those little golden moments that make everything worthwhile. And those are the moments I like to see in life. Those are the moments that I live for. And I don't know, we overlook the little things sometimes because we're so wrapped up with everything that's going on in our personal lives or everything that's going on in the world. In fact, there's two, extremes to that. The polarity between the people who are so self-centered that all they worry about is their own lives. That's all they talk about. And then others who are who don't like themselves, or maybe don't think about themselves much, but are just totally focused on the rest of the world and the problems in the world. The kind of people who tend to point out everything that's wrong. But in the end, we've all got our own little bubbles to live in, I guess. So the moments that are important to me are the ones where I can learn something from people, and I've learned so much doing videos on YouTube. It's funny to say, because thinking it sounds so cheesy, to think that I've learned from people that I never met. And when I started doing this, I had a different approach, or I should say a different opinion. The idea that I remember saying once that internet friends will always be just associates and never can be a friend. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, what defines a friend? You've met people in your daily life that maybe you don't even agree with, and they become your friends merely because you know them. Being within personal, relations, personally close to a person, or physically shaking their hand is, a good way to know them, but not the only way. Anyway, I've grown to understand a little bit about why people think the way they do, just by observing those I've had conversations with. And I feel like I've come down a long road in my life since I was young, and every year it's like something new is gained. And my thought is that if you're not growing, you're stagnating. And so I came to this idea that, there was something I was thinking earlier about, having a passion for life, I was telling my mom about the idea of attachment and non-attachment in Buddhism, and how, what it means, and that it's the idea that it doesn't mean you can't have something in your life that you really enjoy. It doesn't mean that you can't have cool things, nice things. You go through a phase where you may just say, material goods are holding me back. And then you realize that it's all in your head. You could throw everything in the garbage, strip down naked, and move away, but you're still trapped here in your head. And once you've cleared your head, then no amount of garbage in your environment really affects you. At least that's the way I see it. And so realizing that has allowed me to understand the idea of attachment, because especially, I can't remember who said that you can't be attached to anything, even non-attachment. You become attached to the idea of not having anything. You become obsessed over maybe, telling everybody, well, I don't need goods in my life, or, hey, I don't watch TV anymore, or I don't do this or that, and it becomes a pious attitude. I'm a vegetarian now, and sometimes it has good intentions behind it, but it just comes out wrong as poking and prodding at other people. So we become defensive, and we go further into our little bubbles. So my point, I guess, would be that opening up is really the only solution for us to all open up to each other and be honest and straightforward. I heard somebody say the other day that there was a comment section we were discussing, how to bring ourselves out of this situation. It was actually in the comment of this shooting that we had here, and this is in my neck of the woods, that more or less. the shooting they had down at the Umpqua College yesterday, and I went to look up videos just to kind of find some info, and sure enough, I figured the first 5 videos would be people saying it's a hoax, and I wasn't wrong. And, I just found these people to be complete morons, and I found that they were making connections and numbers and making, anything up that they can. Before any information even comes up, these people are claiming it's a hoax. And I know that that stems from trust issues, but I've realized that it's a type of person who tends to do that, and then you'll find a comment section, you'll find one rational person. So I commented back to her, and she was saying that she thinks that the problem is that we need to have empathy for one another and to care more about one another. And I said, I think that that's a good path. It's a good start, but we also have to remember, or equality is what she said. We have to treat everyone equal. And I said, that's true except for a couple things. First off, some people don't deserve to be treated equal because they don't act equal. They act like spoiled brats or selfish jerks, and they deserve to be called out on that. And one component of that means that if a person does wrong, other people are going to have to either stand up against them or ignore them. Now, it's easy for a majority of society to stand by and watch something going wrong, but that means that somebody has to stand up and defend against it, and they become, the violent one that can't be peaceful. But as we've seen through history, which repeats itself, people don't stand up for each other. I would say it compared to a mother hen. You're defending your young, you're defending your fellow man, you're defending your friends. Hens aren't violent by nature, but damn, if you come near them, they're chicks, they'll lash out. And and that's my way of saying that, yes, sometimes people have to be, can't always treat everyone equal, because there will always be a couple percent of the people who are sociopathic and take advantage, take more than their share, and they will have to be called out by someone. Reminds me of those shows they have where it's like, what would you do? And they'll have somebody like yelling or beating their kid out in public to see if anybody says anything, or like steal money from a blind man, or that homeless guy, that kind of stuff, to see if anybody stands up. And it's amazing how many people don't say anything because they don't have the balls. But the ones who stand up tend to be the ones who are considered confrontational. And so I'm one of those guys, the guys that stand up against the bullshit when I see it. So people are just people, and I know that. We all do the best we can, but we can't hide from the problems, but we can't become so obsessed and wrapped up in them that we miss the connection. But anyway, back to the point. She said that she believed that it was that we need to have equality, and I said it's not equality so much as raising our children. It all comes down to parenting, but not just parenting your own children, but teaching your children to have values and respect for each other. If you look at a lot of the problems with kids today, it's bullying. And people, I was talking with someone who said cyberbullying is the big problem, and I said, that's true, but it's always been this way. It's just that bullying was accepted back in the 60s and 70s. Bullying was just part of school. Now parents have become such prissies that, if your kid even gets a bump, you're going to file a lawsuit against someone. And I've got 3 kids, I understand. I wouldn't want anybody messing with my kids either, but we definitely have bubble wrapped them to the point where we won't even let them be kids anymore. But anyway, the bully thing is a serious issue with a lot of people, and sure enough, this is why a lot of kids lash out, because they've been picked on. But whose fault is that? Does that mean that it's social media's fault? No. Does that mean that it's the parents' fault? Not always. Whose fault is it? It's the fault of everyone for not coming together. I see people as shepherds and as sheep, and when people talk about sheeple, you have a choice to either be a wolf or be a shepherd. And if you want to be a wolf and go attack people from being dumb or not being aware, then that's your loss. I prefer to educate people as much as possible on the fact that they are empowered, that a sheep is not a negative connotation. What I mean by sheep is those who follow suit with everything they're told, the people that believe that if the shit hits the fan, they can call 911. The people who really believe that the government's out to protect them and that the companies have their best interest in mind. It amazes me that these people exist, but they do. There are a lot of people out there who really believe that the government has their best interest at heart. And then there's other people who believe that the whole government is out to get them, which is even just as preposterous, because The government is just a conglomerate of people, being people. Some of them make bad decisions, some make good decisions, but as a whole, we can't generalize. I prefer not to anyway. When you break it down, you realize that we need to respect each other. That means not saying all people of this color or this way, or all people of this race or that way, or all people of this sex, or this persuasion, this orientation, especially not just because you're a politician, you're a scumbag, or just because you do this. It's enough finger pointing. It's just bullshit. We need to really get to know people, because I've met some people who, on my assessment would initially say that this guy is just a piece of shit redneck, gun-toting hillbilly that knows nothing, and then have a serious conversation with the person, and then just hit myself thinking, why would I even have a judgment call like that? Because of the way a person looks or initially speaks? It's not fair. It's not fair to judge each other on one comment or one idea or one theory a person has, I've seen people who get along just fine until you disagree with one thing. You could have known them for a long time. You disagree with one thing they say and they won't even talk to you anymore. And, it's a crazy world, and there's a lot going on out there and a lot to take in. And I think that the more we educate ourselves on what's really going on, which means knowing, I heard someone say this on a TED talks yesterday or today, I think, that until we take science and politics both into account in our lives, until we're interested in those, and plus spirituality I would throw in there, and many various other aspects, but the idea of consolidating and knowing everything, because he was saying that back in the day, a politician would have to understand a little bit about neuroscience, a little bit about this, a little bit about that. These days you don't have to know a damn thing about anything. The people who are running the Treasury know nothing about money. The people who are running the, Food and Drug Administration have interests in, their companies, and it's just a preposterous setup, We have to think for ourselves, but it's not all out to get us. It's out for personal gain. Because everybody wants to feed their family. Everybody goes home at night. It's not a giant conspiracy. It's millions of little conspiracies, and everybody wants to have a piece of the pie. So, that's my way of saying that the best thing that we can do is to not buy into it, to not accept that we have to have anything to be anything. To be able to sit with a loincloth on, or less, and feel confident with who you are in your situation. Because when you strip away everything a person has in their material world, sometimes there's nothing left but a shell. How strong is your persuasion? How strong are you as a person? If you knew nobody and had no power, and you had no money, you had no resources, and you had to start fresh, nothing to call on, how well would you do? Or are you just relying on other people believing lies, or, bumming off of something, or a million different ways? Can you survive? Are you a survivor, mentally and physically? And I'd like to think I am. I think the one thing that could be taken away from me that I would break down is my family, but hey, that's not something that's obvious, because love goes separate from material. Love is something all its own. And I won't even go into that, because there are many people we all love. We all know how that works. Anyway, peace and love. Namaste, everybody.